In this video, I will talk about one of the most important concepts that we always have to follow in your application. This concept is how to work with JSON in C# application. JSON structure is something that is used in almost all the applications, especially in web application. This is super important. So if you are working with some web applications, then learning about JSON is very important. And there are quite a few ways to work with JSON in C# application. We are having some very great packages. For example, we are having Newtonsoft. So this Newtonsoft is available as a free of cost, and you can use that to work in your application for serialization and the deserialization. But in this video I will talk about something different, and that different is that .NET now has its own built-in JSON serializer, and we will talk about that JSON serializer in this video. So basically we will not install anything extra from outside from any package. Whatever we will use over here, that would be built in to the .NET. Before learning about JSON in C# application, I am assuming that you are having some basic experience about JSON. For example, what JSON is and what is the use of JSON. Now, if you have some basic knowledge about the JSON, then there are two very important operations. One is serialization and the second one is deserialization. So what is serialization? The process of converting your C# object to JSON is called as serialization. On the other hand, if I talk about the opposite operation, which is converting your JSON to C# object, is called as deserialization. Along with these operations, there are several customizations that we need to do, and we will try to cover all of them, all the important concepts in this video. So let's start. To start this concept from the basic one, I'm gonna create a new basic console application. So for that, I'm using this VS Code, and here I'm using .NET 8 as of now. So here I will click on this create .NET project. You can also use the command line tool to create your application, and let's do that. So this is create .NET project, and here I have to choose what kind of application I want over here. So I want to create a new console application, this one. So I have to provide a place where all the files will be stored on my system. So this is my D drive, and this is the .NET Core, and over here I want to store all my files of this project. So let's select this folder, and now we will have to provide a name to this application. So here you can keep it console app1, or you can also give any meaningful name as per your choice. So let's keep it default and press the enter button. So this will create a very basic console application by using the VS Code. And if you want to create your project from VS Code like this, then you must install this package, which is called as this C# dev kit. So if you are having these packages, then you will get this kind of menu, and you can create your applications directly from VS Code. Alright, so here we are, and this is my solution file, and this is the console app1. Alright, so this is the program.cs file, and there is nothing over here. I have removed everything. Alright, now let's create a new class over here. So for that, here I will be using this new file button, and let's say I'm using this employee model.cs. And this time I will be using some of the feature from Copilot to generate my basic structure. So here you can notice I'm getting a suggestion that press Ctrl+I to ask GitHub Copilot chat to do something. So here I'm typing generate an employee model with address, and let's see what we will get. I will press the enter button. So this GitHub Copilot will generate some code for us. Depending on the speed of your system and internet, this might take some extra time as well. Alright, so it has generated these things for us. So it is employee, and there are 4 properties: ID, name, email, address, and here we are having this another class address, and this is what I have mentioned over here, that I want to generate an employee model with address. So everything is fine, and let's just accept it. And here, just for the better learning, I'm writing this employee model. Alright, so I'm having this ID, name, email, address, and this address is also another class. So over here in this program.cs class, let's generate a new object of that employee model. So here I'm typing var employee new employee model, and immediately you will notice that we are getting some suggestions from this Copilot. Alright, so let's say I'm writing sample, and here I'm writing this address as well, and here you can see that we are having this employee object. Alright, now I want to convert this C# object to a JSON. How can we do that? So for that, automatically I'm getting suggestion from this GitHub Copilot. So let's just simply press this enter button, and here you can notice I'm using this JsonSerializer.serialize. So this JSON serializer is available under System.Text.Json namespace. So what I'm having over here, I have not installed anything extra. I'm using this System.Text.Json, and there is a class JSON Serializer. Basically you have to use that class. So JSON Serializer dot, there is a method serialize. So what is serialize? The process of converting your C# object to the JSON is called as serialization, and that is what we are doing over here. So we want to serialize. What we want to serialize? We want to serialize this employee object. So I'm passing this employee object over here, and over here in this variable I'm getting the JSON. So let's understand what we will get in the output. So here I'm writing this console.writeLine JSON. Now I will have to run this application, and for that let's just open a new terminal over here, and in this terminal window let's write a command which is .NET run. So that command will run this application, and for that first we will have to go inside this application. So here we are, and let's just type that command which is .NET run, press the enter button. Here you can see in this one single line we are getting the JSON. This is the ID name JSON. If I copy this everything over here and just open a new, so in this new file I'm going to paste it. So here you can notice what we are having. We are having basically a JSON over here. But if you are thinking that this JSON looks like a little bit different, we used to have a proper format in JSON, but here everything is written in one single line. This is because by default this method will generate the minified version of the JSON. And for the better visibility, let's just not save it. Here I want to save this JSON in a file as well. So how can I do that? So here I'm writing file dot write all text like this. So basically I want to write all my text in this employee.json, and this is the value that I want to pass. So let's just run this application again and see what will happen. Just notice over here we are having a new file which is employee.json, and this is generated by that code, but I want to have this JSON in a proper format which I like. So let's go back to this program.cs class, and inside this serialize we will have to pass some other values. This serialize method has different overloaded versions, and based on the need we can define our logic over here. Alright, so let's just put a comma over here, and here we have to provide some options. So what is the option? JSON serialization options. And here we have to provide this write intended is equals to true. Now this is the only thing that I'm passing over here, and let's just run this application again by using this .NET run command. This time you will notice that in this output we are having this proper formatted JSON, and if I open this employee.json you can notice that we are having everything as the proper formatted. This looks good actually. And there is one more thing that you can do. You can extract this place from here and simply write where options is equals to like this, and we can simply pass this options variable at this place. And basically there is no change. What I'm doing is I'm extracting that logic from there and I'm writing that over here. Now this basic procedure of converting your C# object to a JSON file is complete. But this is not everything, because if you are working on a real application then there are so many scenarios where you will have to basically customize all these settings. So now let's understand how can we customize all these things. Now I have a requirement that in this employee model here you can notice I'm having all these things. This is ID, name, email, address. But while generating this JSON, I want to rename these properties. It means I want to have my C# code like this, but in JSON I want to have some different name. So how can I do that? So for example, in this name, basically I want to have full name. So instead of writing this name, I want to write full name. So how can I do that? So here I'm writing this JsonPropertyName. Here you can notice we are having this full name, and this is the only change that I'm making over here without making any further change. In this JSON, let's verify what we have currently in this JSON file. You can notice we are having this email, but if I will just run this application again, then you can notice this file has been updated, and what we are having now, we are having this full name. So by using this concept you can rename your properties. So let's just copy it, and let's say for this address as well I'm writing this ADDR or address details, whatever you want to write, you can mention everything over here. Let's just run this application again and see what will happen. So in this employee.json file, even you can see the output in this console window also. Here you can notice we are having this address details, this is the full name, and here as well in our JSON file we are having all the proper properties, and this logic is applicable on this address class as well. So if I want to write, let's just quickly copy it, paste it over here, and here I'm writing this state name, which is good. Run it again, go back to this employee.json. Let's see what we will have. So in this name you can see we are having this state name, and this is the procedure to rename your properties from C# to the JSON. Now let's understand, while generating the JSON, I do not want to include some of the fields. For example, this ID, I do not want to use this ID in the JSON. Currently you will notice that we are having this ID over here, but the requirement is that while generating the JSON, I do not want to include some of the columns. So for that we can simply use one more attribute, and this time I'm using this JsonIgnore. Let's just save it, and just remember what namespace we are using. We are using the System.Text.Json.Serialization. All these attributes are available over here. Alright, now here you can notice that in this employee.json file we are having this ID, but if I will just run this application again, and remember this time I'm using that JsonIgnore attribute, and that ID is gone. Even we don't have that ID over here in this output. So this is how we can ignore some of our columns. Now just simply let's just copy it, and so here is one more requirement. What will happen if I want to just hide this entire address? Can I put it over here on this class level? No, you will get an error immediately. If you want to hide the entire class implementation, then instead of using it over here, you must use it on this address property like this. Now what will happen? You will not get the address in your JSON. Let's just format this like this and just run this application again. I'm using this .NET run command. This time you will notice in our JSON file we are having only two properties, and here in this JSON file as well you can notice that we are having only two properties. So this is how you can ignore your properties and basically an entire class. Now there is one very important concept over here. So for example, here I'm having one field. So what does it mean? I'm having this public, and let's say it is string. Here I'm writing this model name, and here I'm writing this employee model. So I'm having this field over here, and without making any change, let's just try to run this application again. In the output you will notice that we are still having only this full name and email. We are not having this model name. So by default, if you are not doing anything, this serialization will use only the properties. But what will happen if you want to include your model name as well? So in that case, I can use one more attribute from this serialization, and this is JsonInclude. That's it. Just use this attribute and simply run this application again. This time you will notice that we will have this model name as well in our JSON file, and there we go. This is how we can include all these things. Now let's understand how can we handle our naming policies. What does that mean? So by default over here you will notice that we are having this data in the Pascal case, and let's just remove all these things, this JsonIgnore, because I want to have some of the data over there. Alright, so by default you will notice that we are having the data in the Pascal format. What will happen if I want to have this data in the camelCase format? So what is the Pascal case? Pascal case means the first character of your word would be in caps and then in small, then the next main one like this full and name, these are basically two words, so the next one would start from capital, and then all of them will be in the lowercase. Now what is camelCase? CamelCase is something if I'm having this small f, so first character would be in small and then it would be like the Pascal. So I want to generate my JSON like that. To make these kind of changes, I have to customize these serializations. So let's just put it in a new tab, and over here you will notice that we are having one property which is called as property naming policy, and here I'm having this JSON naming policy dot camelCase. Let's understand what we have in this JSON naming policy. So this is an class, and here you will notice that there are several properties. We are having this camelCase, we are having this kebab case lower, this is kebab case upper, snake case lower, snake case upper. So basically these are some default formatting that are available in this class, and based on the need you can use any one of them. So first let's try this camelCase, and then we will think about others. So I'm using this camelCase. Remember, I'm not making any change anywhere else. I'm making only this one liner change and I'm passing this option over here in this serialize method. Let's just run this application again. This time you will notice that all these properties have been updated to the camelCase. But if you will focus on this full name and address details, we are having them in the Pascal case because we have defined that hard-coded name over here. If I will just remove these names from there and just try to run this application again, then you will notice that these two fields will also be converted to the camelCase. This time you can notice we are having this name and this is the address, and everything has been converted to the camelCase. Now if I want to try some other naming options, so let's just use some other one. Let's say I'm using this kebab case upper. Save the changes, run this application again and see what will happen. Here in the terminal you can see we are having everything in the caps, and in the employee.json as well you can notice we are having everything in the caps, and here we are using this dash in the name basically to separate the two words. Alright, this is how you can work with the naming policies. But what will happen if the naming convention that you want to use in your JSON does not exist in this particular class? For that you can create your own custom naming policy, and let's understand how to do that. So here I'm going to create one more class and the name is custom naming policy.cs, and let's understand. Here I'm going to create a new class, so which is going to be public class, and let's say it is, so we are having everything in the suggestions, let's use that, and we have to inherit it from this JSON naming policy. And this is the benefit of using this GitHub Copilot, because we are having everything in the suggestions. So let's just use this namespace, and there is one method which is convert name, and we basically have to override it. So whatever value we will have in our property, that will come over here, and basically the logic that you want to write, you can put everything over here. So now I will be using this particular custom class. So for that, let's just remove all these things, and here I'm writing this new custom policy. Alright, without making any other change, let's run this application again and see what will happen this time. So here you can notice that we are having everything in the uppercase, and in this employee.json as well we are having everything in the uppercase. If I want to append some text over here, so let's say this is like this plus, so basically I want to append my name in all the properties, although it is not required and there will not be any kind of logic, but this is just for the testing purpose that we can customize this logic up to our need. And let's just run this application again and see what will happen this time. So here you can notice I'm having my name in all the properties. If I open this employee.json file, then here you can notice I'm having this name. So basically this is the concept to customize your naming policies. Alright, this doesn't look good, so let's just remove it from here, and let's use the previous one, which is camelCase. camelCase looks good. Alright, now let's understand one more very important concept, which is something that we always have to deal. So in this employee model, this time let's use some department as well, and before that let's create an enum over here. So I'm writing this public enum department, and here I'm having some departments. This is IT, HR, finance, and this admin, and I will be using this department over here in this employee model. So this time I have added one enum as well over here. This is department and the type is this enum. Alright, let's go back to this program.cs class, and over here let's just define the value of the department as well. So department is equals to department.it, which is fine. And now let's just try to run this application and see what will happen. This time you will notice that in front of department we are having this 0. Where is this 0 coming from? So basically this is the index from this enum. Here we are, and this is the index. So if you are using HR, you will get 1. If you are using finance, you will get 2. Let's try that also. So here I'm using this HR, and instead of using this IT, let's use this HR. Run it again. You will notice this time we are getting 1. In this employee.json as well, you will notice we are getting 1. But what will happen if instead of having these numbers, I want to get that exact string text? How to do that? So there are two ways if you are using this built-in JSON serializer. So first approach is that you can handle that concept by using these options, and let's understand how can we do that. This time we have to use the converters, and here I'm using this converter, and let's just format this code a little bit. So format this document, and there we go. So this time this is the only change that I'm making. Converter is equals to this new JSON string enum converter, and naming policy would be the camelCase. Okay, or maybe we can go with some other cases that are available over here. Now let's just run this application again and see what will happen this time. This time you will notice we are having the string value in this department. Okay, so let's go back over here and see what is the value. It is HR over here. So it means if you want to display the string values from your enum, then this is something that you have to use in your application. If you do not want to use this one and you want to make the changes directly on the enum, then you can also do that and go back to your employee model, and over here basically you have to use that attribute. So this is JSON converter, and in that JSON converter you will have to provide the type of JSON string enum converter. And remember, you can also provide your naming policy as well over here. And here we are having this HR, and let's see what we have. So this is the value that we have over here. Now I have one more requirement, that I want to maintain the order of the JSON properties that are getting generated from this C# model. So basically you can notice that here we are having this ID, name, email, address, and everything else, and here also we are having all these properties. So if you want to maintain the order, then remember one thing, the default order of all these property is 0. So if you are not setting any order, then it is 0. But let's assume that I want to have this ID at the end. By default I'm getting it at the first, but I want to have it at the end. So what I can do is I have to provide the order over here, and let's just use the JsonPropertyOrder, and here I'm passing the 1. Okay, just save all the changes and let's run this application again and see what will happen. This time you will notice that this ID is available at the end. Why? Because the order of all these properties, of all the other properties, is 0. It has 0, it has 0, all of them are having individual 0 order, but we are having ID which is 1 order over here. The order value of ID is 1, not this value, the value that we have given over here, and 1 is greater than 0, and the greater order will come at the end or at the lower side, and the lower order will come at the top. So basically let's assume that I want to have this address at the top. So again I can write one more order. So this is JsonPropertyOrder, and we can also provide the value in minus. So here I'm writing this -1. Just save it, and let's say I want to have this department also at the end after this ID. So what I can do, I can add one more order over here. So this is JsonPropertyOrder, and this time I will be having 2 over here because I want to have it after this ID. So first this should work because it has the lowest order, which is -1. Then all other properties which are not having any kind of order attribute, so those will be there. Then this ID will be displayed, and then after this ID this department must be displayed. Let's test it, run this application and see what will happen this time. So here you can notice that first we are having this address, and then at the end we are having this department because the order of this department is 2 and the order of this ID is 1. So this is why we are having this proper order over here, and this is how you can maintain everything. And remember, this concept is not applicable only on one single model or object. If you are having a list as well, then also this concept will work. And let's generate that list by using this GitHub Copilot. So here I'm writing this, generate a list of 5 employees from employee model. Press the enter button. So here you can notice that it is generating 5 employees for us, but I think this time it is using some other name which is not good. So I will be updating these names. So let's say I'm using this ID over here. Let's just rename them and replace this ID age with ID, and this department is equals to, let's replace it with the email. Okay, this time I will be passing this employees over here, and these are the options. All the concepts that you have learned in C# are also applicable over here. Now without making any other change, let's just run this application again, and this is our terminal window, and let's just run it .NET Run. So here you can notice that we are having a proper JSON file of all the 5 objects. If I open this employee.json file, you still can notice we are having all of them over here. Address is null because we have not provided this value. We are passing only few of them and we are having everything over here, right? So this is how you can work with the serialization concept, which is converting your C# object to the JSON file. Now let's talk about the deserialization. This deserialization is the concept of converting your JSON file to the C# object. So it means whatever we were doing over here so far, which was basically converting from C# object to the JSON, now we will have to do the opposite thing. And for that, let's just start again with the basic thing. Okay, so what we have now, we are basically having this C# object, and this is the all other fields we are having over here, and the camelCase and everything else. So let's use the camelCase. Now what I basically want some JSON file. So let's just run this application again, run it, and go back to our employee.json class, and here you will notice that we are having this entire JSON. Let's just copy it, and this is what I needed to work with the deserialization. So here I can just this time remove it basically, and let's just maybe comment because we may use it after some time. These options are also required in the deserialization concept. So here you can notice that I'm writing some employee JSON, and let's do that. So basically I'll be using these So this is what we have. We are having this employee JSON over here, and I'm using these 3 codes to write the string in multiple lines. So let's use this employee JSON this time over here. I'll be using this employee JSON. Let's just remove everything else, and remember we will have to convert this JSON to a C# object, and here we will have to provide a type. So let's use the deserialize first, and in this deserialize you will notice that we will have to provide a type. The type would be in this case this employee model. So basically we want to map that JSON from JSON to the employee model, and that's it. So let's just remove this line because this time this is not required, and this time this is not the JSON, this is basically the object, employee object. Okay, and here on this console window let's use this name, that's it. And before that let's put a breakpoint so that we can have a look what all properties are there in this C# object. Now let's run this application, and this time I will be running this application in the debug mode. So for that let's click on this button. If you will try to have a look on this object over here, then you will notice that none of the value has been mapped over here. Why is this happening? This is because the name that we have written over here are in the camelCase, but the name of our properties are in the Pascal case. So by default this mapping is case sensitive. If they are having the exact map, then only they will map this value. So let's just test this also. So here I'm writing this name in the caps. So I'm correcting the name of only these 2 fields, the name and the ID. Let's run this application again and see what will happen. So here again we are having a debugger, and this time you can notice that in ID we are having 1 and in name we are having this John. So by default if you want to handle all these things, let's just do it again, ID and name in the camelCase. So this time I want to map my camelCase to the Pascal case. Basically I want to avoid this case sensitivity. So how can I do that? So this time again we will have to use these options. So let's just uncomment all of them, and let's just comment these properties because we will use them whenever they are required. So here I'm using this property name case sensitivity is equals to false. I do not want to use the case sensitivity. Okay, and let's just pass these options over here. Just put a comma and pass them. That's it. Now let's run this application again, and let's summarize what we have done. Basically we have created the options by using this JsonSerializerOptions class, and here we are using only one single property, which is property name case insensitive. If it is insensitive, then we have to write it true. So the property case name are insensitive. Okay, now let's just run it and see what will happen. And here in this employee object, this time you can notice that in this address we are having all the fields. We are having the department, we are having this email ID, model name and name. All of the properties have been deserialized from the JSON to the C# object. And now just like we were having so many other customizations in the serialization, we can also have all these customizations in this deserialization process. So for example, in this employee model, let's understand if I'm using those attributes, for example, the JSON property name. So which means I'm using this JSON property name over here, JSON property name, and here I'm writing this UID. So basically what I'm expecting is that in my JSON file I will have this value in the UID, and I want to map that to this ID. So let's go back to this program.cs class and let's just expand it, and over here in this ID, this time I will be using this UID like this. So I want to map UID, and I want to map this UID to that ID, and I can also have some others just for this testing purpose. So let's use this name, and this time I will be using this, let's say f name. Okay, and in my JSON file over here, instead of using this name, this time I will be having f name. So this time what I'm expecting is that in my JSON file I'm having a property with different name, and the property that we have in our C# object is having different name. So I want to basically map them, and that mapping can be done by using this JSON property name. And remember, this property is also applicable in the serialization, and we can also use it in the deserialization. So let's just run this application and see what will happen. And here you will notice that in the ID we are having the ID, and in name we are having that proper name. This is how you can map your properties with some different names. Now let's talk about that JsonIgnore. So I want to ignore this email. So how can I do that? JsonIgnore. I do not want to map this email over there. So let's run it and see what will happen this time. Here you will notice that in email we are not having anything. We are having only the default, which is null. So this is the default value of a string. We are having the null over here. We are not having any mapping from the JSON. Now let's understand, I want to add some validations over here, and for that let's assume that I want to have this email in my JSON as a mandatory. Let's remove it from here, email. Okay, so it means I'm not having the email in my JSON, but I'm having this email property over here, and I want to make it required. So I'm using this as JsonRequired. So what will happen now? We are adding a validation. It means that this email must be there in the JSON file. Let's just run it and see what will happen this time. This time you will notice we are getting the exception. What is the exception? It is saying that the JSON deserialization for type employee model was missing required properties, which is email. So it means this JSON is missing the email property. There is one more way to use this required concept, and which is the built-in C# feature, which is I can use this required keyword over here. So instead of using that attribute, I can go with this required as well, and let's just run it again. And again also we will get the same exception. Here you can notice we are getting again this same exception. Alright, now let's just go ahead and learn about other concepts. There would be some scenarios where your JSON file would have some default or some dummy things, or basically this is an invalid JSON. What does it mean? It means, let's say here I'm having some comments. So this is how we can write the comment. This is a comment, and that's it. And let's put some unnecessary comma as well over here. So although we don't put the comma at the end, but here I'm writing it just to make it as invalid JSON. Okay, so now let's just run this application again and see this time what will happen. And here again you can see that we are having some errors. It is saying that there are some unnecessary things, which is this / over here. So it means by default it is not reading the comments over here. Now we can handle all of these things by using the options, and here are the options. Let's use some of the properties over here. Here we are having one read comment handling. How do you want to handle the comment? I want to skip them. Okay, now that's it. Now let's just run this application again and see this time what will happen. This time you will notice that again we are having one more error, and it is saying that the JSON object contains trailing comma. It means that comment error is gone by adding that property, but we are having one more error which is about this trailing comma, and this comma is something that we have added over here at the end, which is not a valid JSON. So again we can have one more property over here, and if I search allow trailing comma is equals to true. Okay, now again let's just run this application, and this time you can see there is no exception. This JSON has been converted to this C# object. Let's see what we have. Here you can see we are having all these things. Everything is there except this email, because we don't have the email property in this JSON structure. Now let's understand one more situation. So let's say in this UID, this time I'm having it like this. So what I'm doing this time is basically if we are using numbers in JSON, then most of the time we don't use the commas over there. We use them only for the string values. But what will happen if we are having them? Or just for the testing, let's convert this zip code as well to the integer. Currently we are having it as the string, but now I want to have it as integer. So what is the problem? The problem is that I'm expecting it as an integer, but in JSON this is written as an string. Now let's just run this application again and see what will happen. And there we go. We are getting the exception as expected. It is saying cannot get the value of token type string as a number. So we are having a string, but we want to convert that value to a number, which is not possible by default. So how can we handle that again? So here we have to provide some more things in the options. So how can we do that? Put a comma over here, and here I'm having this number handling. That's it. So here I'm using this allow reading from a string and this write as a string. Now let's just run this application again and see what will happen this time. And this time you can notice that there is no exception. Everything has been converted over here. So we are having this proper ID and we are having this zip code in form of integer over here. And this is how you can handle your invalid JSON as well. Now let's understand one more situation, and which is going to be, let's say here I'm having some properties. So this is my custom property, and in this custom property, let's say I'm having some values, which is 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, let's add one more. So this is again custom 2, and this is basically an name. So I will write my name over here. The scenario is that in your JSON file you are having some extra properties and you do not have the corresponding mapping properties in your C# class. Then what will happen in that case? And these could be n number of properties. So to handle all these things in your model class, you will have to generate one more property. And let's give a meaningful name, which is going to be this extension data. You can give any meaningful name as per your choice. And this is public, not the property. Okay, now we have to make it special. And what is the special? It means I want to map all the remaining values that we have in the JSON to this particular property. How can we do that? So for that we will have to use the dictionary over here, and in this dictionary we have to provide some key and the value pair. This is going to be in the form of string, and the second one is going to be in the form of JSON. So here I'm writing this JSON element. Okay, and we have to add one attribute at this place, and that attribute is going to be JsonInextensionData. That's it. So this time this is the only thing that I have added in my model. So this is a new property. The type is dictionary, the key is string type, and the value is JSON element, because this could be anything. Okay, and we are using this attribute which is JsonInextensionData. Let's go back to our program.cs class and run this application, and remember these two properties are extra over here. Or let's make it one more extra over here. So this is going to be custom 3, and this time I will be writing some boolean value. So this is the true. Okay, let's run it. Here in this employee object, you can notice that all other properties have been mapped successfully, which was working like the earlier concept. And in this extension data, we are having three properties. One is this custom, which is having this 1 2 3 4 5, then custom 2, then custom 3. If I expand them, then you can notice in key we are having, so basically the name of your property is key and the value is the value of this dictionary. So this is how you can handle the overflow data that you have in your JSON file. So these were some very important concepts about the serialization and the deserialization. But remember, we were using all of them in the console application. What will happen if you want to use this concept in some real framework? So here I have created this ASP.NET Core Web API application, and this is the default application, whatever we have over here. We are having this program.cs file, and we are having one controller, which is this weather forecast, the default one. Now first of all, let's test this application and see how things are working over here. So I'm just going to run this application by clicking on this button. So this will open the Swagger, because that is a part of this application by default. There we go. This application is running over here, and we are having this fun endpoint, which is this. Let's just click on this, try it out, and click on this execute button and see what will happen. So we are getting some response body over here, and this is, I think, in the camelCase. So this is the data that we are getting, which is fine. Now I want to use my JSON options at a centralized place. So how can I do that? So for that, there are two ways. One is if I'm using this add controller or add MVC or add razor, these methods, then over here we can write this add JSON options, and over here I can pass my options like this, and here I'm writing this options dot JSON serializer option. We are having this thing over here, and let's use this property name. Property naming policy is equals to, let's say it is naming policy, this thing. Okay, so this is what I have mentioned, and or you can also use this thing as part of the namespace. So let's just do that and remove this dot from here. So instead of using this camelCase, because camelCase we already have over there, let's use something else, or this could be kebab case lower, or let's go with the upper for the proper identification. Okay, so this is the only change that I have made over here, and now let's just run this application again without debug mode. We will have the Swagger UI, and this time if I will just hit this endpoint, try it out, click on this execute button, you can notice we are having this entire data in form of our kebab uppercase. If you want to add more options over here, then just like this, simply add the name of your property and the value, and this is how you can write all other properties as well over here. But in case you are using some minimal APIs, then in that case you will not have this add controller or other methods over there. Then in that case, how can we handle the situation? So for that we will be using services this time. So let's use this builder dot services dot configure, and what we have to configure, we have to configure the JSON options. This JSON options is available in this Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC, and over here again let's use this options, use the lambda expressions, and there we go. Let's put the semicolon over here, and basically I will be using this options dot JSON serializer options dot naming policy, and again naming policy dot kebab case upper. Okay, that's it. So remember, this time I'm using it as a separate configuration. Okay, let's just run it and see what will happen this time. There we go. Let's just click on this try it out button, click on this execute button, and this time again you can notice that we are having all our properties in this upper form. So this is how you can use the JSON options at a centralized place in your ASP.NET Core application. And this program.cs file is common across all the frameworks in .NET now. So you can use this concept to use this JSON options at a centralized place. And that is all about the JSON serialization in this video. I hope after watching this video you will be able to work with the JSON in your C# application without any problem. If you are still having any problem, any doubt, then feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and please make sure to share your feedback about this concept, whatever we have learned in this video, in the comment section below. That is all in this video. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.